Brad Williams, Frugal Finance. Practice, practice, practice. We're going to go through some future value examples. I'm going to go quickly. I'm going to leave this up to you to work through, but basically I'm going to show you, looks like 14 different examples using future value, maybe some present value stuff. So how much does 1,000 accumulate after 3 years at 7% compounded annually? I'm going to use the compounded annually here, but we're going to get into continuous compounding soon. From the previous example, we used this simple formula. Future value 7, which is the rate, that's your compounding rate, 3 years and $1,000, 1225. Here is Excel. If we go to the traditional formula, we use 1,000 times 1.0 term 3 years. Here we're going to use 1,000 divided this by 1.17. You're going, wow, all right, well, there's more than one way to get here. You could see all we did was we took 1,000 and divide this 1 by the factor to come up with 1225.04. Present value of 1225.04 at 7% for 3 years. In other words, what amount do you need to put in 3 years have 1225? That's present value. Remember at the very, very beginning, I said you have a starting number. That's your present value. It's $1,000. All we did was use the present value factor. But if we look at the formula, here it is, 1225.04. We're going to divide. We're going to divide by 1.07. Okay, all we're doing is some simple algebra here in order to do this. Third example, what is the interest rate? The rate compounded annually if we deposit $1,000 after 3 years. I'm going to walk you through the various Excel formulas available here. All we're doing is using the rate function. The rate function. You may not have used this before, so go in, familiarize yourself, and click the FX, the function icon. You can work through this unless this is all familiar. You just use these formulas. Here it is, rates. Then the inputs, remember your present value, you're going to have a future value number in there. You're going to tell this tool number of periods, payment. We're not looking for a payment. We did that in the previous example, or we'll look at it future. The present value we know is $1,000. What is that ultimate number we're trying to reach? 1225.04. And it'll come up with the rates. Over here, you can use the same format, but you're going to have to use this power. We're going to have to use some creativity here, and we're probably going to have to use this log function in order to pull this off. Work through this. What you're going to have to try to solve is for x to the third. And then here again, we have you deposit $1,000 at 7% per year. How long will it take to earn 1225? We're trying to solve for a number of periods. Well, Excel makes it really simple. Again, we're going to use the rate, we're going to use the present value, the future value, and we're going to come up with the number of periods. That would be here. In order to solve this, we use this in the traditional format. We're solving for this right here. Break out the math book if you need to. You're going to need to understand your log normal in order to solve this. This is not an algebra class. You may need to brush up and work on your algebra in order to pull this one off. 1,000 has accumulated to $2,000 in 8 years. What is the annual growth rate compounded annually? Great question. Here we have rates. Here we're using the rate function. And keep in mind, 1,000 has accumulated to $2,000. What's your present value here? What's your future value? Keep that in mind. When you look at this stuff, think of present value, future value. We have a rate. We know the number of years. We're not working with a payment. We know the present value is 1,000 and we want it to grow to $2,000. Well, here you go. Excel does it in a snap. What is the present value of $2,000 at 9.0? We're just going to reverse this. We're trying to find the present value of that $2,000. So it's $1,000. What is the interest rate? We're going to look at the same thing as we looked at earlier. Future value, C12, $2,000, the term. This is worded wrong. What is the interest rate if you deposit 1,000? And this should be rate, okay? And I'm going to let you fix that. You deposit $1,000 at 9.051% per year. How long will it take to earn $2,000? 8. Number of periods. If you need to work through this, remember the tools up here. Rule of 72, remember what that is? we're going to take the 72 divided by C12 times 100. What's C12? C12, we're going to go up here, 9.05 times 100, 7.96 years. Why do we multiply this times 9 by 100? Well, let's look at this. Copy, paste. Because, I'll tell you right off the bat, because you have to have 9.51% in the rule of 72. It doesn't understand 0.951. If you do this, go equals 72, divide this by 9.51, 7.57. It doesn't understand percentages. It understands whole numbers. That's why you multiply it times 100. It could be a rounding error or what have you, because I have 757. We're just basically, it's just a rounding issue. 100 grand investment earns 14% per year compounded annually. How many years before it reaches $1 million? Remember, 100 grand, is that our future value or our present value? The million, is that our future value or our present value? Always think of the order. And if you understand the order, then Excel makes it really simple because it gives you all the clues. Here, we have 14%. There's no payment. We have a present value of 100 grand, and then our future value is going to be $1 million. Here, we take C28, which is going to be 100 grand, I guess. It has to be. C28. Where's C28? We have $1 million. Divide that by 100,000, and we can use this 1 divided by E22 minus 1. We're going to come up with 14%. How do you do that? Just do some simple algebra. We're solving for the 1757. We're actually solving for, where's the formula? Well, you can work through it. What is the present value of $1 million? All right, all we're doing is going backwards and forwards. It should be 100 grand. Future value of 100 grand at 14%, million. Again, you can work through this. Here's the old school method. You should be familiar with how this works. What is the future value of 100 grand at 14 compounded annually? Again, I just repeated this over and over. This is a lot of practice. This is sort of a homework assignment. I want you to work through this backwards and forwards. Work with your algebra. Spend some time and break these down algebraically. Work through them backwards and forwards. Brad Williams, Frugal Finance. Thanks for watching.